Waterview Apartments Phase 3, located in the northwest corner of Willowpoint Way and Nautical Mile Drive. The applicant Legacy Development Company Incorporated is requesting area variances to allow front setbacks less than what is required and a district buffer area less than what is required, associated with the construction of 6 buildings plus a community center, total of 56 units, each 2 stories in height on a proposed 13.15 acre parcel, giving SBL number 093.06-3-64.11, located in an MHR medium-high residential district under section 350-14 of the Code of the Town of Webster.
How's it going?
Good evening. I'm Chris Nadler, General Counsel for Mark IV Enterprises. With us here tonight we have David Cox from Passero, our design engineer, and Chris DeMarzo, the President of Mark IV Enterprises and owner of Legacy Development, the owner of the property at issue here. As you know, we've gone through several design iterations on this project over the years. In the 1980s, this parcel was approved for a 7-story, 158-unit apartment building, along with the approval of Phase 1, which consists of 35 townhouses, and Phase 2, which consists of 62 townhouses. Earlier this year, we proposed to the town 2 3-story apartment buildings containing 90 total units. We participated in sketch plan review with the planning board, and we came before the zoning board and heard feedback from both boards, as well as feedback from our neighbors and other members of the public. We took that feedback to heart, as you can see, and redesigned the project completely. As you can see, it's significant reductions in size, scope, and number of units. But more importantly, we are presenting townhouse-style apartments, so it's more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. What we're proposing now is 56 townhouse-style apartments, each with their own garage, separate entrances, driveway, a clubhouse, a dog park, and sport court for use of the community. This is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, what's already there. One thing we are proposing as well, this one show it, and I want to, this is a recent change to the plans. There will be one single entrance onto McEwen instead of 6 separate driveways. The building will remain in the same location, but the driveways will converge into one single entrance. There will be an extensive landscape buffer between the driveways and McEwen Road to shield our neighbors and the road. Additionally, we'll be adding 4 parking spots in front of the clubhouse. Some of the challenges we faced in putting together this plan was that there are 3 road frontages surrounding the property, and there's utility easements along the eastern portion of the property, coming from McEwen over to the existing townhouses. We did manage what I think is a really great plan that's in keeping with the neighborhood, that those revisions eliminated 2 of our variance requests. And now we're left with front setback variances that we're seeking. The largest front setback variance would be 18.7 feet, where a 75-foot front setback is required. That's on Maritime Drive, this building here, along Maritime Drive. It's important to remember that from the building to the property line is 18.7 feet. That's an 18.7 foot setback from the property line. But from the property line to the road, there's another 17.5 feet. So the total distance from the building to the road is 36.2 feet. Most of the buildings in Phase 1 and Phase 2 have between 30 and 40-foot driveways setbacks from the building to the road. Some of the townhouses in phases 1 and 2 have as little as 27 feet from the townhouse to the road. So what we're proposing is definitely in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. If we didn't have these, if the board didn't grant the variance, we'd have 100-foot long driveways, 70 feet back from the property line and then another 25 feet to the road. That would be substantially more pavement and substantially less green space. Josh, can you put the overhead, the aerial with the arrows on it? That one. As you can see from this map, we're also requesting district buffer setback from an MHR multifamily residential zoning district to a residential zoning district. It's a 38.5-foot setback where a 100-foot district setback buffer is required. Similarly to the driveway setbacks, we have an additional 22 feet between the border between the two zoning districts, which is the property boundary, and McEwen Drive, which is 22 feet away. So our buildings to McEwen is 58.5 feet. The single-family homes on McEwen are across the street, facing the front of the townhouse building. The distance from our building to the McEwen houses is at least 152 feet away. It's 152 feet between the proposed building and the existing homes on McEwen. Again, there will be a landscape buffer between the homes and the proposed building. The distance between the existing townhouses in phase 1 and phase 2 and houses along McEwen is as little as 66 feet between buildings. We're proposing 152 feet between buildings, and what's already there in the neighborhood is 66 feet. So it's definitely in keeping with the neighborhood. We met with the planning board for another sketch plan review to go over the proposed plan last week. They received it favorably. I understand at least some of them have indicated that to you in correspondence. And we're looking forward to coming back with them next month for site plan approval. We went back and designed something that's in keeping with the neighborhood. And I think that the variance requests are absolutely reasonable. David and I are here to answer any questions the board might have.
Well, I want to say thank you for heeding our comments and making adjustments accordingly. I'm struggling seeing that graphic, and that graphic is, we don't have that graphic, and our screens are not working. So if you have copies, I would greatly appreciate that. As part of your...
I'm on a 5-member board, so something that I can share.
Well, I believe 5 of us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. You indicated significant plantings of vegetation along McEwen Drive.
Yes, sir.
If I'm reading this plan correctly, those plantings are happening outside of your property line? Am I reading this correctly?
Yes, that's correct. We'll work with the town to allow that in the right of way.
What kind of vegetation would you be anticipating?
Yeah, mostly straight trees.
Mostly street trees is the answer.
So we believe that 10 street trees is an adequate landscape buffer.
I think, given the distances here, given the fact that these are townhouse-style apartment buildings that have individual garages, individual entrances, that's how streets are created, is, two residential structures facing each other. Here we actually have a lot more distance between the houses on McEwen and the one building that faces McEwen. So,
But your idea
yes,
of a
absolutely.
substantial landscape buffer is 10 trees, right?
And there's foundation plantings as well.
Well, that's not in the buffer. just trying to make sure that I understand what you present.
And
I'm
there's
not
also-
familiar with what a street tree is,
Okay.
so if you can explain that to me, I apologize.
Yeah, give me 1 second to find the landscape table. So, sweet sunset maple trees, honey locust, black gum, and then we have Robin Hill serviceberry, Raising Sun redbud, fringe tree, rail star.
So all trees that are gonna lose their leaves in the wintertime, it sounds like. I'm not-
And actually, they're all deciduous material, and the vast majority of them are actually large shrubs, not really. They legally be called trees, but they're more shrub-like in size and appearance.
What is the overall general height, the max height that this vegetation grows?
Yeah, so the, obviously, the maple, 35 to 40 feet tall, the honey locust, 30 to 50 feet, the black gum is 30 to 50 feet, and then the serviceberry is 20 to 25, the redbud is 8 to 12, the fringe tree is 18 to 20, and the star magnolia is 10 to 15, and the agricort lilac is 8 to 10.
Gotcha. Thank you, appreciate that. Other comments from the board? Questions?
So with, just to make sure I understand, with the revised driveway of the building that is closest to McEwen, or the one that faces McEwen, that 38-point distance remains the same, there's no change other than I'm just consolidating the driveways?
That's correct.
Is there any other comments from the board at this point?
The required buffer is 100 feet?
Correct.
That's correct. And the proposed setbacks to the buildings to McEwen?
Is it 38 feet? Is that, am I reading that correctly? Okay. 38 feet.
41.8, I believe.
41.8 is what you're seeing?
No, there's a 38 point, on McEwen, there's a 38.5 and then a 41.
The building facing McEwen will be
Oh,
41.
it is 41. The one to the left on the screen is 38.5.
I got you. So the side of the building to the left is going to be at 38 feet, 38.5.
Yes.
I got you.
That building, by the way, faces the pump house. You
Yep.
can see it on the snap.
Yep.
Directly across from the pump house.
Understood. Okay.
Right. Just so I understand, a buffer between districts, does that have to be green space without anything in it, or am I treating it like a setback? Because I had assumed buffer was green space. Okay. So really, we don't have,
So that it does not include ingress and egress though.
buffer does not include ingress and egress?
It allows
It
ingress,
allows ingress and egress.
Okay, all right.
but the road cannot run parallel with the buffer. It can run through it perpendicular, but not parallel.
So the unit that is facing McEwen, you have the road that is running parallel to the
That's
buffer,
right.
right? So the buffer would start at the edge of the drive.
So with the previous plan where the driveway ran individually to McEwen, that was permitted, but having a single egress on McEwen now changes the dimension technically to the buffer?
That's correct. It's a balancing.
Okay. I just want,
Don, just for clarification, why would that change that? Because it's still egress and egress.
It does, but it occupies more space of the buffer, so it eliminates any type of screening that, potential screening that may be needed.
Well, I just want to make the board aware that This particular change of consolidating the driveways was made at the planning board's request, as well as the highway superintendent who wants to limit the number of curb cuts to the public road.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would say it's a balance.
No, actually, I think it works much better than the August submission. The two big block buildings. This is far and above a much easier and more palatable design, I think. And I think it'll work, not only does it work better, I think when you're going down the street, it'll look nicer and more in character with the surrounding neighborhood.
With that, I'm going to open it up to public comment unless anyone else has any other questions at this point. We're going to back to the board after. All right, I open up to public comment for this. Somebody wants to speak? The total 5 minutes per individual, so.
I'm David Dyer. I live at 400 McEwen Drive. My property, the southeast corner of my property is right at that curve where the road comes in by the pumping station. I did see, am I correct, that you've redesigned the road so it doesn't go across my property, which I appreciate. Is there supposed to be a buffer between my property and a private road? I don't know the town code for that.
You don't know the answer to that, we can look that up.
So if the snow plow is plowing, it would plow onto my property, not that I use that as my driveway, but it is literally going onto my property. So I don't know if that's again, to be considered further redesign to push that road further away from the southeast corner of our property.
You're on the north side of McEwen, is that correct?
I am.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot see that screen, so.
Yeah, so where the road curves in, I am right along that property line there. Is there somewhere I can point? So yes, this is, my property line is here and here. So this is.
Okay, that's your spot there. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I'm not sure if there's a way to redesign that. Also, I'm not excited about the hook of the road coming into McEwen. Concerned about cars just whipping around that corner and not slowing down or stopping, and that does go against the Department of Transportation recommendations for roads coming in perpendicular to another road. So I'm not excited about that corner and that curve. I'm also a little concerned about the fact that we're only using 32% of this property and 4.2 acres, and we're cramming 56 units onto that, 13.4 units per acre. I understand why they're doing that, but I think that's skirting the way we're trying to get around medium high-res property. So that we are putting a lot of units in a very small place on that property. It does. And I don't see a community need or a hardship by the developer need to do that, other than they want more units on that property. There are ways, in my opinion, they could redesign this property. It may be a few fewer units, not opposed to the development. I'm opposed to doing things that are against the code. We really, in my opinion, should be following the code as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Charlie. I was here previously. I'm at 440. First off, this new design is better. I will admit that. We're still concerned with the same questions you have in terms of the buffer, right? If it's not going to be as big as it should be or as long as it should be more significant. There's no other MHR in the town of Webster that will have this small of a buffer between an R3 in our case or an MHR district. Almost all of them have significant, whether it's vegetation, trees, shrubs, things that are a lot bigger than what they actually propose right now. So if we're asking for a variance, or if they're asking for a variance in that buffer, I'm asking the town to consider making that buffer a lot more significant than what they're currently proposing. I also kind of went down the black hole in terms of cluster development. I kind of understand the need to develop properties in the most suitable part of the property. What I don't understand, and I don't know if you can answer this, is very similar to what Dave was saying earlier, and how the calculation in terms of the area relative to the number of dwellings that's allowed in a cluster development. I was trying to do the math myself. Couldn't quite figure it out. I don't know if that's something you can answer right here today, but it's definitely something I want you all to consider.
I do appreciate the question. The calculation is based on the total size of the lot, so there are two lots being combined, which totals, I believe, Mr. Nadler, was it 12, 13 acres?
12 and a half, 13.
12 and a half, 13 acres. So we're calculating it and look at the total size of the lot.
Okay.
But your questions would be great for the planning board. They can certainly speak to any concerns you might have about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just note, this is not a cluster development. It's not a chart.
Thank you. Other, anybody else, other comments from the public? No? Okay. I'll turn it back over to the board. Any other questions from the board at this point?
I'm sure it's more of the purview of the planning board, but because it is a district buffer, I think there should be more plan material to buffer. Not that the proposed buildings are not going to be really, really attractive, I believe that. But it is, as a district buffer, I think, especially since you're doing it in the right of way and not on the property itself, and you basically have a parallel road going there, I think it would make a much better plan if there was some more plant material in there, not just necessarily trees, but a mixture of both size and types, deciduous and evergreen, along with shrubs and trees as well. But once again, I don't know if that's more of a planning board thing, but I believe it goes to the character, which then brings it back to us for saying that, but that's just my opinion.
I agree with you, taking a step further, buffers were meant to protect any residents outside of their project limit. The project limit, unfortunately, is the property line, which is the right of way to doing. I personally think there should be more green space from that project limit to the project itself. This way it protects the single-family homes on the Huon and also protects the
I agree, but since it is, that green space is shortened, especially with the parallel road, I'd like to see that small little area right away really almost overplanted to make up for that lack of distance.
Well, as it stands right now, that driveway, it's a zero buffer.
Right.
So, if I may, Chris DeMarzo just came up to me during the public hearing portion and said, we're absolutely going to put pine trees or evergreen trees in there. We can absolutely beef that buffer up, including in the lawn between the driveways, if that's what the planning board or this board would like. Usually the way we select is through the planning board process with input from our neighbors. They're the ones who are going to wind up looking at it. But we can absolutely beef that up. I think we're probably going to anyway.
With the new design, the unit that is on the McEwen, what was the purpose for its distance off of the property line versus moving it further south?
I think elimination of unnecessary pavement is a large part of that. We can have 100-foot long driveways.
I'm not talking about 100, look, to everybody's comments here, I mean, the road, the drive road, I'm gonna call it, the one that is parallel to the property line. If we were to take that building and move it back 15 feet from, right, I mean, you're adding 15 feet of a perpendicular driveway. That's what you're adding, right? We're not talking about adding significant to all the other properties or whatnot. You are getting closer to the bioretention pond. You are making the fields in the backside smaller, right, yeah, in that a little bit smaller. Again, I don't know what the distances are, but if it was to move back 15 feet, that gives the ability to provide more buffer, staggered buffer versus, right, I mean, you have a row of trees that are, you know, next to each other, you end up, a single row of trees doesn't really provide a great deal of buffer, but if you're able to provide a staggered row of trees, it provides a much better level of buffering.
And plus moving that, what you want to call the access road, or the roadway, gets it out of the easement.
Correct.
And all that too, which, once again, if it gets close, they can tear it up and say, hey, have fun putting your driveway back in.
Right. Is that something that you guys would consider?
Well, so I think it eats up usable green space to add, not unnecessary, but irrelevant green space. There's not going to be, you're not going to be able to perceive a difference. It's important to remember, Josh, could you put up the overhead, the aerial with the arrows on it? It's important to remember that our buffer, where we're measuring from, is our property line. And then what's after that is some space between our property line and McEwen Drive. And then there's McEwen Drive. And then there's a bunch of front yards. And then 160 feet away are single-family residential houses. Generally, the residential district buffer requirement is when you're putting an apartment building in the backyard of single-family residential. The backyard is where the activity of a home is focused, not the front yard. So putting an apartment complex, even right on the border, impacts that home. We've got 160 feet to what's people's garages, and then a little bit more to where their foyers and living rooms and dining rooms usually are in a single-family home. But so we're not, you know, I don't think there's a ton of space to add, to move that building back.
Mr. Nadler, the planning board asked you to incorporate the community center in those courts? Was that-
Yeah, that's
is that a
absolutely
request from that board?
Yeah, and that's fundamental to the plan. We have an existing complex here. I think it'll really make this a great project.
The building that enters McEwen Drive, as far as the access, what if you flip that and utilize the access point to the clubhouse? Where will it?
So, you know, we looked at that. That was my initial idea, but I'm a lawyer, not an engineer. It does not work that way. The project isn't feasible that way.
There's about 9 feet of elevation change, so.
Grading, that's what
Yeah,
that.
this building is about 9 feet higher than the clubhouse area.
Yeah,
And then you have, you know, people on McEwen looking at our backyards, not the front of the house like a residential street is, you know, the design should be.
Actually, townhouse really doesn't have the backyard, if you know what I mean. Every reason that I utilize, like a single family.
Any other comments? I'm gonna go back to my question before, because I didn't hear an answer to it. Would you consider, or is there an ability to slide the building facing McEwen back a number of feet? You know, I'm looking at, I see we're about 15 feet from the retaining wall. The retaining wall is about 8 feet from the corner of the pickleball court. You know, so I don't know, we're 25 feet plus or minus from the corner of the pickleball fencing is what I'm reading. I don't think that's feasible.
I mean, we could do a foot or two with it. I mean, there is a backyard to these townhouses.
Yep.
And, you know, you don't want to destroy that. You don't want to impede on the sport court or the clubhouse. And I don't think we can go back a foot or two, but I don't think it'll be perceptible.
I could also probably shift the, that parallel driveway, we can shift that a few feet too. So we could probably get to a 5 foot, moving the building a couple feet, shifting the driveway a few feet, you can get at least 5 more feet there.
Yeah. Just my thoughts, that would be helpful. Understanding that parallel driveway was a request by the town, but that does put you at technically 0 foot as a buffer, which I understand that there's green space on the other property that can be vegetated to block it a little bit, but I think if you could make it a little bit deeper, it's still going to be a significant change from what's there now, but it will be a little less harsh with more plantings and more depth of plantings.
Okay.
I think either way they're planting in the right of way. Even if they remove it out, because
Right.
you're not gonna take that extra couple feet if they move their.
They would need to do both.
Right.
Right.
They would need to do both.
We can absolutely do that.
Well, and maybe that helps get you out of the easement a little bit as well.
Well, for the driveway, absolutely, but I think for planetary, you wouldn't want to, it's been my experience that I generally would specify the easement because tree roots tend to do what they do,
Yeah.
and
On the
it
south
can be
side.
detrimental to any type of utility.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Does anyone have any concerns with the front setback?
It's within the complex, I really don't care.
No, well, it's,
To be honest with you, it's a private road.
there's more townhomes beyond this parcel,
That's right.
and it's very similar to that.
Yes.
Yes, and it's, like I said, it's a private
Yeah.
road. The buffer concerns me. I don't want to establish a precedent. Say you don't establish a precedent, each application stands on their own merit. But it concerns me, could have established a precedent. Initially, this third phase came in, and I believe it was like 3 acres, 2.5 acres. So they combined lots to get around the density issue. God bless you. What's to prevent them from splitting that land off? That concerns me also.
Well, the planning board.
The planning board can impose a condition to prevent
Well,
any
I
future.
would think that the zoning board would also.
I would at least think the zoning board would make that recommendation. Do you have, and I'm assuming that this will be the end of the development for this property, and even though there's acreage that's undeveloped at this point in time as part of this 12-acre parcel, you're not planning any additional development on that acreage?
That's absolutely correct. We're not, this is the end of the development. This is the end of the plan from the 1980s, and this is the end of the owner's plan on development.
The plan is to then not subdivide the property and then sell off the property for another developer to come in and this is the parcel.
Absolutely, that is not our intent. The open space sloping down to the bay is integral to not only this project, but our current 62 townhouses that we rent. It would be a devastating blow to lose that. We also couldn't subdivide it below 5 acres because we've been out of compliance with town code and would need a variance. So again, we could, but we need the planning board and the zoning board to approve it again, and that's not.
All right. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Nadler, you said that in regards to the buffer, the distance from the road to those other single-family residences, what's that distance there?
The distance from our building to the closest McEwen house is 153 feet. And again, there's houses in phases 1 and 2 that are 60 feet away between buildings.
All right, there's no other questions or comments from the board. Close the vote on seeker. I'd like to make a motion for a type 2 action under seeker pursuant to NYC section 67.5 of the environmental code.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Short,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Hauser,
Aye.
Mr. Santola,
Aye.
Mrs. Waller.
Aye.
Okay. With that, walk through the findings of the project. Somebody else, if anybody wants to do it? All right, this request is not out of character in the neighborhood. The applicant has really made an effort from the initial submission to the current submission to ensure that the project is within the character of the neighborhood itself, both within the current property as well as adjacent properties there. There will not be a detriment created to the nearby properties. At the end of the day, the applicant has agreed to provide additional 5-foot setback, more than what was previously proposed, as well as buffer plantings to minimize and eliminate any visual impact to any of the nearby properties. The benefit is not achievable through any other methods due to the slope of the property all the way down to the bay, as well as the immediate area. The benefit is not achievable by any other methods. This is a large project. It is a substantial project for the area. There are no adverse physical or environmental impacts to the site or the neighborhood that it's within, especially with the buffers being put in place and 151.8 the document that I have, adding 5 feet to that, 156.8 feet from nearby structures themselves. Difficulty was not self-created. This is the property, this is the natural slopes that are there. This is a desirable change to the area from the fields that are there. With that, I'd like to make a motion to provide a variance to the Waterview Apartments Phase 3, located at northwest corner of Willowpoint Way and Nautical Mile Drive. Applicant Legacy Development is requesting area variance to allow a front setback of 18.7 feet, where code requires 75 feet, and a district buffer area of
We vote on each one of those separately.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
So we're gonna deal with it.
Do I have to make a motion separately on each one of these,
Yeah.
right?
Motion,
Good.
the front setback.
So second, I'll second the front setback.
Okay.
And that's the front setback to Maritime Drive.
Correct.
Is there a building number on that?
No, it would just be the one facing Maritime or facing England.
Yeah.
So we're doing a front
Setback
setback
variance.
first of 18 point,
What was it, 18.6?
18.7.
18.7.
okay, so who seconded?
Corinne seconded.
So Mr. Short,
Aye.
Mrs. Volo,
Aye.
Mr. Santola,
Aye.
Mr. Hauser,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner.
Okay, you have your 18-foot front setback. For the second one, I make a motion for a district buffer area less than what is required. District area buffer would be 43 feet, where code requires 100 feet.
Is that inclusive of the additional?
That is inclusive of the additional 5 feet.
So one correction, the one facing McEwen is moving down, but the one that's kind of perpendicular on the left side of the street,
Is not changing.
that one's not changing, that one's 38.
That one's 30, correct.
So can we do a dual buffer, so to the,
You guys made this real complicated for us.
westmost 10-unit building have a buffer of the 38.5 feet, and the building facing McEwen have a 5-foot buffer to that connected drive.
Can I recommend that you grant the variance of a 38-foot buffer setback with conditions that the building move? I think that would comply with public notices, with condition that we move the building back.
But,
As it sits right now, that access driveways at the 0 buffer. So removing the access driveway 5 feet.
Because I'm assuming that everything in that building will shift south 5 feet, so the building and the access road.
No, the building was shifting 2 feet, and the driveway was shifting 3 feet. So the driveway is 5, but the building's only shifting 2.
So back to what, I think what Corinne was saying earlier, and I think I got you, is that the westernmost building have a buffer of 38 feet.
Right.
The building facing McEwen,
Would be 43 feet.
Well,
to the
it would be
building.
5 feet to the drive road,
Yes.
is what it ends up being.
I thought we were going to do 3 on the driveway.
No, but when you move the building to, it makes the driveway go
Right, yeah, right.
total 5.
And I can do a condition of moving, I think you said moving the building 2 feet, and moving the driveway 3 feet.
Well, the driveway would move 5 because of.
Right.
Correct, yeah, sorry, yes. But it'd be 3 feet closer to the
Well, and
building.
Yes,
yeah,
closer to
that
the building,
yes.
is still going to be further from McEwen than the westward
Yes,
10-unit building.
yes.
So,
It'd be a 43
Can we
feet.
also add condition of additional landscaping or landscape materials
Can we
of
just
both
get
sides?
the buffer? and
So-
just-
Okay,
Yep,
I'm just,
got it.
Because it's,
I
everyone's
just-
talking.
I don't wanna
and there's
miss
no clear direction.
Okay, I'm gonna try this again. So, I make a motion for the westernmost 10-unit townhome to have a
38.
single-family district buffer variance of 38 feet from the property line. And the 10-unit building facing McEwen to have a 5-foot buffer to the drive and to maintain a 43.8 feet buffer or distance to the property line.
Yes.
second.
Nailed it.
With the conditions of buffer landscaping to be provided both in the buffer zone on your property, as well as work with the town to provide buffering in the right, in the town property as well. Now, need a second.
Mr. Short,
Aye.
Mr. Santola,
Aye.
Mrs. Bola,
Aye.
Mr. Hauser,
Nay.
Mr. Leidner.
All that being said, you now have two variances, one for the front setback and one for the buffer setback, with the conditions of additional buffer vegetation, as well as moving the building back 2 feet and moving the horizontal or the dry road back 5 feet. You have 1 year for the project. You need all other permits and approvals from the planning board, et cetera.
I'd like to thank you all very much for your thoughtful consideration. We appreciate it. We appreciate the feedback we got over the summer from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Josh, thank you.
Really? Oh my God. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
That way they do both at the same time.
I'm gonna be backing up and.